so sorry about that. There was one thing in particular that my parents always said to me before leaving the house. Mind your manners. This reminder is explicitly due to me being raised in the South, especially in a Black household. I was raised to say yes, ma'am, and no, sir, and always, always apologize, even if it was as simple as a bump on the street. It wasn't considered a choice necessarily, it was just manners. But the South is so much more than just its manners. It's a mixture of Black solidarity and an electric awareness to the white people around you. It's near tangible in nature. A holding of the door here, a nod to an older gentleman there. These are the things that made up my childhood. Simple phrases that I never would have thought twice of, like, the devil sure is beating his wife today, and shoot, if I was any better, I'd be twins. And a classic that is commonly misunderstood, bless your heart, which is not a pleasantry, rather a subtle jab. Intrinsic to my being, utterly unchallenged, and yet simply never acknowledged as a thing. I spent 7 years of my life in Texas, specifically Dallas, which if you've ever spent any time there, you'll know it is a place in which everyone knows everyone. Lifers who spent K through 12 on one singular campus and even plan to send their future kids there. It was around my freshman year of high school when I began to get cabin fever. Yes, even in the second biggest state in the US. I began to think, there's gotta be something else out there. I just needed something different. So, when the opportunity to move to California presented itself, safe to say, I was excited. I mean, I was ecstatic. I couldn't get enough of the idea. In fact, I created a list of things to be excited for. I mean, all of these I consider reasonable, especially my personal favorite. Babe, it's California. But I mean, things align perfectly. I was reunited with my family, fortunate enough to be elected captain of the rugby team, and most importantly, I got to attend school with my dad. He was the auxiliary coordinator at St. Francis, and what that essentially means is that we spent every waking second together. We often used to make jokes about finishing our 12-hour shift after grueling back-to-back practices that finished at 7 p.m. A majority of my list managed to be checked off, yet some things still didn't feel quite like home. I had visited before and realized, okay, manners are not our top priority out here, but that didn't necessarily bother me. I was so excited by the aspect of everything else that I didn't realize how drastic the change was going to be. And unfortunately, that the reckoning was going to be within my own community. Growing up, I had always felt secure and validated within my own race. I had been exposed to a myriad of Black support systems that laid the foundation for who I am today. Affinity groups in second grade, racial injustice since third, and racial consciousness conversations since fourth grade. I had been involved in a BSU in some form or fashion at every single school I had gone to since kindergarten. Where I come from, my people always stuck together, whether that be through challenges or achievements. When I was little, I used to imagine myself as one of the BSU leaders that had been my role model, daydreaming of what it would be like to be at the heart of my community, the shelter during the storm. It is due to my strong foundation and upbringing that I feel such a strong connection to the Black community. I think another part of it is having a father figure who was so proud and adamant about being Black and being who you are and representing your people in the best way that it was just rooted in me from the very beginning. Years of family dinners where my siblings and I would sit around our 5x5 oak table discussing what makes us, us. These conversations can only be attributed to my father, as he always wanted to cultivate open dialogue and yet also leave room for uncertainty. Being with him feels like being in a church. You feel small and humble and amazed, and yet you get absolutely no answers to your questions. But you have the unshakable belief that he will never, ever guide you away from what is right. I say all this to emphasize the juxtaposition of my experience in California thus far. The unity and acknowledgement that had seemed so banal before, a culture of love nearly boiling over in a pot, had suddenly been turned to a low simmer. It was jarring, an entirely new behavioral pattern that seemed socially unspoken. Blackness was acknowledged, but not proudly worn. Black students were friendly, but not connected. The unity and culture I had grown up with had suddenly been stripped from me, and I was left with, yes, blackness, but an independent type of blackness, something I had never experienced before. It appeared to me like bees, who shared the same ideas and goals and even appearance, yet still chose to try and make their own hives. I began to wonder if this unique problem of independent community existed only within St. Francis's Black community. I got my answer when nods or smiles or greetings on the street were not returned. When energy of the reciprocated Black experience was met with blank stares. Not only did I begin to accept it, but I began to expect it. One thing I couldn't shake, though, was why our culture was barely at a boil. I came to the conclusion that other cultures had taken from the once boiling pot, and what was left was kept at a simmer. Hair, clothes, language, you name it. Other cultures had taken what they had liked and deemed it their own. Thus began the commodification of Black culture in the Bay Area. Since I had moved here, I had noticed the hairstyle capturing, the clothing copying, and even the language choices becoming a mixture. Specific edge styling techniques, braid cinch clips, Black streetwear and brands, mass appropriation of African American vernacular English, all of it a diluted version of the real authentic culture. I'm familiar with how diverse the Bay Area is. I can promise you that growing up in a town that was predominantly Black and white creates quite the contrast. Prior to moving here, I had heard the Bay Area commonly referred to as a melting pot. What I want you to do is imagine all the cultures that exist in the Bay Area and think of them having their own figurative pot of culture that sits cooking on a stove, whether it's on high or medium, whichever is chosen to be socially cool that year. Over the decades, it gets richer and develops a stronger flavor profile. Now imagine all the other cultures cherry-picking the cool taste of flavor from the Black pot without returning the favor. The contents in the Black cultural pot are too unique, too different, and too rare to capture and share within its own essence. So the other cultures took little pieces and they commodified it and made it palatable to others. And just when it was not noticeably Black and perfectly diluted, they sold it. You see, this ties back to the pot metaphor. The reason that the Black culture is still low on its contents and left on a simmer and not full from trading with the other people of color is because they weren't exchanging pieces of culture. They were trading Black culture in return for societal acceptance. Gold bracelet clips, traced back to ancient Egypt, used to signify status and divinity. Silk African headscarves, now coined as bonnets, and sold with the pretense of protecting all hair types. African American English, traced back to the South and its roots. The list is endless and still growing. I call it a trade because that's exactly what it was. A trade of acceptance at the price of your own culture. So while moving to California provided me profound opportunities and new experiences, the perspective I gained in Texas didn't allow my perception to be fully rosy. So what does it look like to appropriately borrow from another culture's pot without effectively altering the significance? I can't tell you what it looks like for everyone, as that would be a non-applicable generalization, but I can tell you what it looks like for me. It's using your manners, coming to someone humbly and asking them the historical significance. We as a community need to be able to share, to learn and grow. So often do I find people afraid to ask a question, terrified of rejection, that they miss the beauty of learning entirely. I also hope that this has made you think about your own perspective and how to step outside of it. This problem extends beyond the Black community. It is a pattern found in many other minority groups. It's subtle, and yet it's depriving thousands, if not millions, from being able to claim what's theirs and bask in it. I hope that this talk has made you think about your own perspective and how you may be able to step outside of it. I like to think that life is a mass accumulation of our experiences. But what makes it even richer, what makes it really worth living, is getting to hear about perspectives far outside the reach of our own. Thank you guys so much. And do not forget to say, excuse me.